Hi guys, in this episode we are going to show you how you can wrap an existing web application into a native mobile app. So we are going to use WebKit and SwiftUI to do this. At the end of this video you'll be able to restore the state of your web application even when the user closes the mobile app. And also we're going to show you how you can manage cookies so that allows you to restore your session or keep the login information within your application. So let's dive in. So the idea is to click on a mobile app, and this application, for example, what we've done, we've used Google app, as in like google.com, google.com. And if you go in there, you simply just show you this. And if you go to certain pages, for example, setting, and then click on t-shortage, for example, you can see that page easily. Also, if you close this and open it again, it will restore the state of the mobile app to where the user left it, which is great because that's what you want for your mobile application. Also, we do save the cookies and inject them into the browser when the user start using the tools. So this way you can restore your sessions and what have you. So let's dive in and see how it all works. To start, I'm just going to delete this application that we had here. I'm going to step by step recreate this. So obviously you need to have Xcode, the latest version preferably. And then you click multi-platform, iOS, whichever, but the focus here is iOS and iPadOS. Click next. I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it My Web App Wrapper. Next thing, I'm going to keep this as it is. We don't need any storage for this one. As of now, we're going to keep it simple so we can focus on what needs to be changed. Click on Create. I'm going to choose desktop. Well, let's just go document and create the project. Take a few seconds and voila, we're in. Can ignore that. That's just for Git repository. So let's look at the project structure. One thing we have is the web app, My Web App Wrapper app. So many apps in there. So the purpose of this is basically the genesis of your application. So when you launch the application, the iOS will look into this function or a struct, let's say, and it does exactly what it says. So in this example, it creates a window within the iOS device, and then load content view. Content view is another view here that you can see. It's just simply it has a stack and an image and a text. So let's get rid of this, and I'm just gonna launch this. And what we should see here is just a blank, empty app that will load up in the simulator. Let's give it a few seconds. Open anyway. So you have a log window down here. Oh, I haven't chosen the right device. So let's say iPhone 15 Plus here, and then click Run. So the app should appear here momentarily. And here we go. That's it. Okay. Nice white application here with nothing in it. Right. So the first thing we need to do, we need to create a web view. In the past, web views in iOS, there was a container called UI web view where you could easily embed that into your mobile application. It would take care of your cookies, local storage, all of those things, and it would share some data with your Safari browser. But obviously, Apple has changed that due to privacy and making sure the security of these things are not going to affect your actual browsing, all of those things. So what they've done, they created a new object called WK Web View, which is part of a package called WebKit, as Apple calls it. So, and all of the classes within the WebKit has WK prefix behind all of their classes. So let's create a new class to basically define our web view and how we want it to behave. So I'm going to create a new Swift file. I'm going to call it WebView renderer and create. All right, so before we start, we need 3 packages. We need to have our foundation. We need a SwiftUI. I will tell you why we need that one later. And the WebKit, obviously we need to have a WebKit. So let's initial our class. So we're going to say class this NS object. We're going to inherit from this as a NS object, and that's it. So this is how to begin. Next thing, we need to have our initializer. So let's override init and super.init. Great, if there is anything to initialize. And we need a couple of functions. For example, we need a function to load our page. So I'm going to say load URL as a string. So we can pass in a URL and this will load that particular page, right? Next thing we need to define our WebKit containers. So Apple has this thing called WebKit view, as you can see here. So we're going to name it WebView. And then we're going to initialize this. How are we going to initialize this? Very simple. I'm going to say WebView equal WK WebView. I'm going to say frame 0, and I'm going to pass in a configuration of conf, let's say. So this conf, it's basically your browser's configuration. There could be a lot of things within it. For example, one of the most important ones could be the user agent. So for this, I'm going to define a private WK web configuration up here, and I'm going to call it conf and pass it along. One thing I can configure within this is the user agent. So I'm going to set this conf application name for user agent. I'm going to set this to this is string. This will allow you to do a number of things. For example, single sign-on is one of those things. You may have integrated Google single sign-on with your application, and you want to allow the user to go and log in. So if you include this, it will take care of that. Or certain frameworks, Vue, React.js, things like that. This will allow all of those things function as you would expect it. Obviously, this is going to be valid for the date that I'm making this video. This might change in the future, so keep your eyes on that. So that's almost done. And next thing we need to do now is to sort out our load function. So what we do is we're gonna have this webview.load URL request and then pass in the URL, and this URL is going to be passed true, so it will load it up. So this is great. Now we have a page, we have a WebView embedded, we set the user agent, all good. Now all we need to do is we need to bring this into our application. Given that our app is made with we're developing with SwiftUI, we need a way to use this in here. Oh, I made a spelling mistake here. Let me just correct that. Web renderer. Okay, great. So we need to do that. So we can't just simply go in and just put this in here and expect it to work. It will give you a warning saying, what is this? It's not compatible. So in order to do that, we need a UI broker to tell the SwiftUI, okay, we have this. We want you to understand it, and I want you to render it exactly as I explain it. How do we do that? We do that with representable views. There are 2 representable types, one for obviously iPhone and iPad, and there is one for macOS. So in this case, we are going to use UI view representable, which is specifically made for iOS and iPadOS. So I'm going to create a new class here again. This is our translator, basically. You can look at it as translating your UI kit to the SwiftUI. I'm going to press enter. So we have these 2 files then. If you look at it, we have these 2. One is our web view, which we defined, and the other one is our translator, so that we can use it within the wonderful world of Swift. So SwiftUI. So we're going to create a struct of this class, and I'm going to make sure it's inherit from UI view representable. And now we need to override a couple of things here. One is our initializer. Obviously, when we use this, we want to make sure we pass in a URL to it with SwiftUI, so it loads that particular URL, but it could be your web application. In my case, it's going to be Google, for example. So that's for that. Next thing is there are two other functions that you have to override. One is make UI view, called function make UI. Oh, sorry, make UI view. Oh, the reason it doesn't work, it's just we didn't imported the packages that we need to. So we need to import SwiftUI here. So, and once I do that, the moment I type in make UI, it will let you to override it easily. Next thing is function update UI. Update UI. So these two are two protocols that you can override. It allows you to basically tell the SwiftUI what you want to render. So given that we already created a web view, we're going to create an instance of it up here. We can call it web view renderer, which is this class that we created. Make sure we inherit from it. Let's make sure it's correct. Right. And we do this, and then we're going to initialize it in the initializer by just simply doing this and initializing it. And also we add a load function, if you remember here, right? So we're going to make sure when the object is created out of our web renderer, we just use the load function to pass in the URL, so it will load the page. That's perfect. Next thing is we need to tell the SwiftUI where is our view. So for doing that, we're just going to say, all right, return the web view within this class that we created. And if you go back, you see that there is a public WK web view, which we configure here and have functions to control it. So we pass in the actual view through this make UI view to the SwiftUI to represent it. Let's just do this and make sure this guy is. So this exclamation is basically saying, I guarantee that this value would not be null when we give it to you. That's how, that's what it means. And that's perfect. So we have this, we have all of that. So now if we go back to our content view, we can now use this. We're going to do web view renderer representable. Just representable, you can see here. And I'm going to pass in a URL to it, http www.google.com. Let's hit run. So I expect to see Google within this application once it loads it up. Let's see what happens. Voila. So we have Google. We have its terms and conditions. The zoom works, which is great. All right. Now I'm going to go to, let's say, I'm going to search for something here. For example, tea shortage. Okay, I see this. So if, let's say, this was your application, you want to make sure when the user quit the application, or when it goes to background, eventually quits, if they launch it again, it lands on the exact same page that you left. So I'm going to close this and open it again. Right, and so as you can see, it doesn't do that every time it goes on the home page, because it just reads this and does that. So in order to fix this, obviously we're going to leave this one. That's like our root to our web application. So we're going to leave that as it is. What we'll do is we go back to our representable and add a new variable. Let's call it last URL. What we use this one's a little bit different. If you look at it, it has this little tag here. It says app storage. This basically allows you to save this variable in your system within the container of your application. Nobody else can see this except your app, and it's part of the SwiftUI package. So once you include this, you can just make a small change here. You can say if last URL happen to be empty, that means it's like if it's like first initialization and nothing has been loaded, just use the URL that you pass in as a root URL, which is the Google one that we already passed. If it wasn't, then just load the last URL. That's perfect, right? So now the problem of understanding what was the last URL now is sorted now. The application is aware of the last URL, but we have to set this last URL correctly. We have to, in the system, we have to say, all right, there was the new page. This is the new page. Save this URL for the next visit. So the way we do this is we're going to copy this app storage again. This time we go back to the web renderer in here. We need to monitor the loading of the page. So I'm going to paste this particular, let's say, app storage item here. And we're going to use a delegate, a navigation delegate here, which allows us to monitor where the user is navigating to and from. So I'm going to say webui. If you just type in delegate, it will give you this navigation. There are two delegates. The one we're going to use is navigation delegate, and we're going to say self. That means whatever happens to this web view, look for its delegates within this class. And it's going to complain, oh, where is this thing? It's not, you're not complying with the protocol. And it's right. We have to first say that we're going to comply with it by just saying WK navigation delegate, subscribing to that delegate. Also, from this point on, we need to define a function of them. We need to subscribe to one of those protocols called a did commit. So if you type in WebKit, it will sort of list out all the delegates for you. For this example, we're gonna use this did commit function. Did commit basically means the moment you click on any links within the web page that you're rendering, it will be notifying this particular protocol by saying, all right, there's a new URL in town. Here is the information for it. So what we do then, we're going to save that URL into this last URL, right? So easy. So we look in the web view, we get the absolute string, and then we save it in the last URL. So every time you click, it gets saved. And within the representable, it looks for it when you launch the application. If there is something, it will load the latest URL that you loaded. So let's give it a go. And here we go. Right, obviously it's Google. I'm going to type in, let's say, T shortages again. Right, it found this. Oh, click on something else. And I'm going to close this now and load it up again. I expect it to search Romeo and Juliet ticket just as it was before I closed the application. And voila, that's what you expect. That's great. So this way we can easily save the state of navigation by bringing the user back to the page that they've loaded. Next thing we now need to do is to play around with cookies. This is really important because WK Web View does not look into your Safari browser within the iOS. It's completely isolated and you have to manage all of these things on your own. So let's say you have a cookie that you want to restore every time the user goes back to the application, because that will allow the application to keep itself signed in. How you do this is basically you have to look into the cookies data store. So in this example, I'm going to say, and we're going to go back to the web view first. And in the did commit, when we when we do this, let's say you put in your login details and press on sign in. You want to look into all the cookies that are being created and save a particular ones, right? So let's first look into how you can query about all the cookies that are being made. So you're going to use your configuration and say website data store, website data store dot http cookie store dot get all cookies, right? So this is how you can get all of your cookies. So the best way to do this, you can just look into these cookies by just writing a simple loop. So cookie, well, say C in cookies, and then you can say print C dot, you can just C dot name, and then its value, right? Value. So this is going to be very interesting. I'm just going to put a prefix of something like cookies here, so I can easily filter it out by just putting it in here and running the application again. So when the application runs, look at what's going on down here. As Google make all sort of cookies in your web browser, you get to see all of them. So for example, AEC, that's the value, that's the key, and that's the value. SOC, NID, all sort of things that might not make sense to you for Google, for example. But if you're building your own website, you know what kind of keys, what kind of cookies you have to keep alive. What I'll do is I'm going to select this one, AEC, and I try to make sure that this AEC is being preserved every time I launch the application. So first thing you need to do, you need to define app storage. I'm going to call it AEC just as it is, and I'm going to say its name AEC, and that's like a simple variable, right? Next thing, I'm going to put a condition here. I'm going to say if c.name equal with AEC, I want you to set AEC app storage value, which we define up here, to the value of that particular cookie, right? I'm gonna get rid of this for now. And oh, I forgot to put self because it's in a closure. You have to make sure it says self. And above here, what I'll do, I also am going to print out the value of this AEC every time. So I'm going to say AEC. I'm going to say AEC again here. Okay. So now I'm going to launch this application again. And I'm going to look for the word AEC. What happens is when this application gets launched for the first time, just put this here as well, it should be empty. But once it goes through the cookie creation, it should save it again and print out. So I'm gonna launch this again. So what you'll see first is it's going to be AEC with empty string because it hasn't been created on the first launch. And let's say you do a login or some sort of activity within your web app, and then as a result, you see empty, and then now it saved this value in this app storage variable. So now we have a capability to restore this. How do we restore this? First, we need to define a cookie item. So I'm going to paste this. I'm going to create a function here. I'm going to call it reload cookies. So in this function, we simply reload cookies. I'm going to create a cookie HTTP cookie object, and I'm going to first set the domain, set its name, and then set its value, which is AEC. Whether it's secure or not, when to expire it, and then I'm going to use the webview.configuration.webDataStore. Basically, the conf that we use here, you can just use it there if you like. HTTP store set cookie, and then you can pass in the cookie to it. This way, and I'm going to put this reload cookie right right here, right after initialization. So what happens here, the moment our web view get initialized, if there's anything stored in AEC, it will go into the reload cookies, make sure the value that it has about it get set, and then it goes away. So this time, now when I load the application, it injects this value to the app, and obviously you won't see this at the first. AEC won't be empty. It will be set with the value that it'll saved last, and you can see that, and that is being injected into the application, so it will keep the cookie alive within your environment. So you can imagine you can have multiple cookies that you want to keep live, or you wanted to have a, for example, native button that when you click, it'll log you out, so you can get rid of these things. You can simply set the values and expire them. It allows you a lot of flexibility throughout your application. If you find this interesting, please do let me know in the comment below and subscribe.